for a special bonus episode of the Unofficial Titans Podcast this week. I'm your host for the show, the EIC at SoBrosNetwork.com. Big natural Stoney Keeley, NFL Draft, Tennessee Titans analyst for Stacking the Inbox at StackingTheInbox.com. At Stoney Keeley on Twitter, at Sobros Network on all major social media platforms. Joined a very special treat on today's show. We had to make it happen. I'm scrambling, not even knowing if there's going to be a show this week at all. I don't know if my schedule is going to allow for it. I'm freaking out, but I want to have some material ready just in case. So I put out the call for listener questions. And just like Batman answering the bat signal, I get a text message from Ryan Watson saying, "Hey, I'm good to jump in if you need me." And then, you know what? Owen came through. I didn't end up needing Ryan after all. But I'm like, I can't let this opportunity go to waste. If Ryan's up for talking Titans football, we got to make it happen. So I didn't know if you guys were going to get any episodes of the Unofficial Titans Podcast this week. And now here you are. If you're watching with us live on YouTube, it's your second episode this week. Just, you know what? Why stop working? Why stop working? It's what the people want. We got to give the people what they want. Ryan, what are you working on these days, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Before I get into me about what I'm doing, it's great to hear that you allowed me to join. I hope I can live up to the expectations that you and Zach and everybody else. I'd be remiss if I said the two Justins, Justin Mello, Justin Graver, Easton, JT have been doing a phenomenal job covering the Titans draft. I've really enjoyed a lot of the coverage that Sobros, Stacking the Inbox, Broadway, of course, is putting out. And really what I've been working on is just kind of relaxing youth sports. My daughter's travel sports is taking up the majority of my time these days, but really got to dig into the O-line, scouting a lot of O-linemen, and had a couple that I really liked. And I'm glad that the Titans took my top tackle in the draft. We'll get into that a little later. But I wanted to throw my kudos out for y'all. Y'all have done a fantastic job covering everything with Titans. And then it's good to see this not stopping from what all I've been seeing on Twitter and all the socials here recently.
Man, I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I just got a new notebook on Thursday, and I wrote 2025 draft notes on the front of it. So
and Foster as well. Shout out to him. Sorry, I knew I was forgetting some. I've forgotten a lot of people. James, as it would killed it with his draft stuff too. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Man, there are a lot of people that in this market specifically, like I know I probably sound a little arrogant talking to Titans fans like this, but I'm just not sure that every other market has as good of a core of writers and podcasters and YouTubers as the Titan Circle has right now. It just kind of feels like this particular draft cycle, everybody brought their A game, and it was really cool to be even a small part of that, but to hear it appreciated like that, man, that means a lot to me. I'm thankful for that. Thanks for the kind words. I do have some breaking news.
There's differing opinions about it. It's a good mix of people, but the only thing that I can stand is people, and I don't think you're talking down to anybody right there. The only thing that I can't stand is when people say the things like, "Oh, you must never have played football." Some of the best football minds I've talked to never played it down their life, and they just studied it their whole life. So you don't need to play football to understand it. You could have studied it as well. Mm-hmm. So anyway, just throw that out there. Just the people that are condescending and think they're holier than thou, those are the ones I usually tune out. You're not one of those. Want to throw that out there since you mentioned it. So,
well, it's funny, like that argument to me, the natural progression from that is like, oh, so you've never called a movie that you've seen bad, or you've never gone to a restaurant and said a meal that you've had is bad because you're not a cook or you're not a filmmaker, that sort of thing. I think the same logic applies with football. There are resources out there that you can familiarize yourself with the game if you haven't played it. And yeah, to me, it's just kind of like you start getting into that kind of discussion. It's like, well, you're just trying to like debunk the credibility of whoever, and you're not really addressing the point. But you know what? Let's just sit here and talk shit about Titans Twitter all day, Ryan. How does that sound?
No. I'm a far. I try to far remove myself from these days. In fact, I type things into a notepad and then delete them just for my therapy, so I don't have to say them out loud. I'm really trying not to call anybody dumb or do anything, even though I think they are or whatever. I try to stay out of it. I've been doing really, really good with a lot of personalities that have had subtweeted not me, but my group, and I want to defend people so bad. I'm like, I don't need to do that anymore. I'm too old for that.
Good call. Good call. Well, before we dig into the Titans draft class, I do have a bit of news to break today. So many people, since I wore this hat, I think for the first time on draft night, I think it might have been when Zach and Braden and I went live from the 440 Sports Draft Party, and then I've worn it on Football and Other F Words a couple of times. Anytime this hat shows up on my social media feed, I get people asking me about it. Like, that hat's dope. Where'd you get it? I need to know. And I keep saying, like, my family got it for me for Christmas. I don't know where it came from. So I finally gave in and reached out to my cousin and asked her, like, hey, do you remember where you guys got this hat? Because people won't stop bugging me about it. And it turns out they got it at Lids. So there you go. If you want one of these hats, go peruse the market at Lids. And that is your
Yep.
that is your Titans fashion update for today. So we got two O-line dudes on the show today. This is going to be fun. I'm really excited because I feel like I don't know, man. I feel like a lot of the discussion about JC Latham this past week has not particularly been about the ins and outs of how he plays and the tape itself. It's been a lot of value talk. There's been a lot of talk about moving from right tackle to left tackle, all that kind of stuff. But I feel like you are the right guy to break this pick down from more of a technique standpoint, from more of a tape standpoint. And I want to start there, getting your thoughts overall, your initial reaction to when he was drafted, and whether or not your opinion has changed since then.
I actually got worried during the draft because I was like, because there's enough out there were saying there's, I think, a quote from Callahan that was something about hinted to they may go receiver first round. They wanted, because they were saying something about that's the more exciting people who can actually score touchdowns. Well, I don't remember the quote off the top of my head. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh gosh, you understand. I get it. It's not your fault that the offensive line is in the shape it is before you got here. I get it. It's not you. But come on, we got to start fixing this at some point in time. It's also not your fault that they look. I love Skowronski. I absolutely do, but it's not your fault that and listen, if he turns out to be a Pro Bowler, multiple year guard, you look back on it, it's a good pick, but like, you got to start getting tackles at some point. And as I kind of leaked or hinted at earlier, is that Latham was my overall number one tackle in the draft. And I don't hate Alt. I thought Alt was right there with him. I thought Alt was also a great tackle. I think he was probably the more safe pick of the two. But as far as what a tackle, I look for a couple things. I look, can they technically do everything that you're going to ask an NFL tackle to do? Then I look at that. Are they throwing people around? Are they going to be able to physically stand up to the NFL? And then, are they a little bit of an asshole?
Yeah.
Those are the things I look for. And so when I go back and look at JC Latham, of course, and if you couldn't tell from my, let me point the right way, my blankets back. We had our third child, and I got kicked out of my office, so I'm out so I have to hide some of my stuff. We're moving around, so apologies about that. But so JC Latham, I was excited. I was like, they did it. I cannot believe they did it. I thought they might trade down, and then you still got some great tackles. There's still some good tackles out there to be had, but when they actually did it and got Latham, I was like, they got the guy. So now we talk about a question: left tackle versus right tackle, because we played throughout college, right tackle. So I get the concerns. Trust me, I do, and they're valid concerns, because until you see someone do something at a certain level, you don't know. But I would argue all these tackles have that same question mark, because have you seen any of them play any position in the NFL yet? No,
you
so
haven't.
you kind of have to chill out just a little bit. And again, go back to what I just talked about. Can they do what you're going to ask them to do? Are they physically able to match up? And then do they have a little attitude to them? Let's talk about, can they do what you're going to ask them to do? Everything that pops out when you watch JC Latham on film is how physically bruising he is. I used to go back and I would tell, when I recruited, I would tell people, you really want to stand out, you better dominate whatever level you are. You cannot sit there and say at your high school film that I deserve to be on this D1 team if you just kind of got lost in film. You better pop, man, because high school sports is a mixed bag and a pond. I get it. You're playing at IMG or where Latham played. You play at a lot of places. They're going to play better talent. But a lot of the high school film I saw, I was like, I got to see this guy, offensive lineman, take that 160-pound defensive tackle and move him 3 levels back. My point being is Latham did that with guys that were D1 level players. I don't care if they're going to go NFL or not. They were D1 college athletes, and he was just manhandling people clip after clip after clip. Then you go, can he move left and right? The one thing I didn't see, and it's just because of how it was set up, is there's not a whole lot of wide nine that Alabama went against because they wanted to try to contain the pocket. You wanted to play a little safer. You didn't want to have Milrow just absolutely dance around and go around people. So you want to play contain a little bit there and play a little safe. So I get all that. But on stunt, go back and watch him when against stunts. His footwork is balanced. There's no tripping over himself. He's just like a machine moving left and right, picking up. And as soon as he saw, and the intelligence too, because what I always look for in a tackle or an offensive lineman is that you see, okay, my guy's doing something funny. He's backing up. Oh, and his head would snap immediately to inside and go to pick up. You didn't see that out of Dillard. Dillard was awful at that. Those kind of things got killed. The last tackle I saw that would do some of that for the Titans was, of course, Lawan. So you look for that kind of stuff. Are they going to be able to pick things up, read, move left and right? But then when the man gets his hands on anyone, they are going nowhere. And he's holding. Listen, in the framework, grabbing the chest is, and I get it by definition of physics, that's holding a person. But within the rules of the NFL, that is not holding. They're looking, you just can't wrap your arms around, you can't grab from behind, you can't do anything abnormal. But if you get here, really what the refs are saying is don't let him get in there. Like, I mean, that's simple as that. Latham can do all that. Right tackle, left tackle. Last thing I'll say, I told you I was excited about the pick.
No, I love it. This is what I brought you on for, buddy.
So now we go from right to left tackle. Okay. I was talking to Mike Herndon about this, and he's been doing a lot of research on this, he's fighting the good fight on Twitter about all this. I think he was just as excited about Latham as I was, because he saw the film and he goes, my gosh, it's like watching a college person go against high school. And it really was. I agree with him. But there's not the value you're seeing in contracts between right and left tackle is getting more even than it ever was, because they're realizing we just need guys that can block the edges. So if Latham ends up moving to right, and that's where his home is, but he's an all-pro or Pro Bowl caliber tackle or right tackle, I mean, it's not horrible.
No,
I get it. A question at left tackle at that point, but try him out at left tackle first. See if he can do it. If he can't, great. He could be an outstanding right tackle for you. So, but again, I get the whole left tackle thing when you have a right-handed quarterback because you want to protect the blind side. The movie has ruined a whole lot of things. I love Sandra Bullock. It was a good movie. Anyway, the story's not exactly that. Anyway,
it did. There's a rabbit hole there that we can either choose to go down or not.
That's my past too, to be honest with you. So we're gonna leave that where it is.
Fair enough.
So anyway, Orr hates that movie. Michael Orr hates that movie.
Yeah, he does.
I'm sorry, but I get all that. But in this NFL, you can do so much to help with that blind side, to slow things down. You can give looks at. You can run chips, which I've already said the bad word of chips. Then if you're chipping, why is he left tackle? Yeah. No, it's called using everything at your disposal. Why wouldn't you? It's a toolkit. Exactly. You could use quick passing and what I've seen out of Callahan, he's going to turn this from a run first boring offense that if you don't have a 14-point lead, I was worried about the Titans. If anyone's ever got out to 10-point lead on them, I was like, well, crap, this is over. Ball game. They're not coming back. They're not explosive enough. They're not exciting enough. They don't have enough creativity. And if they did, it was in small enough doses that you were like, all right, come on. 2-minute offense or something, get out of your funk. So I think Callahan's going to do that from the jump. And I think that he's going to find ways to make everyone successful, which includes his offensive linemen. And listen, as much as we want to talk about last year's draft and other drafts, if Will Levis hits from the third round and he's your multiple year starter franchise quarterback, last year, I don't care about any other draft pick. Last year's draft was successful too. And if you find your left tackle out of it the next year, that's 2 good drafts in a row.
Man, I tell you what, from the outside in, J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, and Lloyd Cushenberry, I mean, that sounds like an upgrade.
It's a heck of an upgrade. And I know that we just said that they're not going to be run first boring, but if they choose to run it, that's a heck of a side to run behind.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like they even mentioned after he was drafted, like he's going to help us run the ball. And the signing of Tony Pollard factors in. Like you think about this, and I'm kind of like reading the tea leaves. Like, man, does this team think that it needs to be a little more physical in the run game here? But again, that might be an entirely another episode.
just because, real quick on that point, just because someone says they're going to be more of a fluid, explosive offense doesn't mean you abandon the run. The run is still very important because
Sure.
you still have to be able to mix it up. You still have to have play action, which can still be very valuable. But to set up play action, you have to have successful running. And this year, I think also you have to really, as a franchise, you've lost your face in Derrick Henry.
Mm,
It was
yeah.
there for years. It was known for a power running back. So now you're reinventing everything about it, but you don't want to abandon the run. That'd be a mistake. And you go out and you do invest a little bit into running back. You pick up a undrafted free agent, special teams. Who knows? You've got other things that are there already. Pollard, Spears, Haskins is still there as of now. Dylan Johnson, which spoiler again, we'll talk about him a little later, was picked up UDFA. So, but you've got some running backs there. You've got Pollard and Spears, which are a little different from each other. You don't want to abandon the run and to have this kind of a line you can run behind. And Brunskill wasn't awful last year. I
No.
thought he was a nice piece. The only things I worried about was Brewer, and then everybody else. So you plugged a lot of that out with just this, but with obviously I have no clue what they're gonna do at right tackle. I hope it's not Radens, and if it is Radens, I hope he surprises the heck out of me.
I think they've said that Radens is a guard. If I'm not mistaken, they said point blank they see Radens as a guard, and
I do too. I'm just hoping they don't try to stick him out there because he got fired from being the ticket concession person or whatever he's been doing this majority of the time as a Titan.
Now, how do you? We are kind of straying off topic here, but I don't want to forget to ask you this: how do you feel about the right tackle spot if it does end up being some competition between Jalen Duncan, NPF, and maybe one of the free agent guys or Leroy Watson that they traded for? This hodgepodge group that they're going to have to find a right tackle out of.
I joked on Twitter as soon as they got Leroy Washington. I was like, "Oh, tackle solved. Don't need to draft one. We're good, boys." I was joking. I don't feel great about it at all. I'm really hoping that there's another body they can try to go find. I honestly don't know who they'd go find, but I'm really hoping that they'll go try to find something that can be at least depth and they can at least run through people and give them chances and create competition. I'm hoping that maybe if that all happens, then they'll figure something out. But I don't feel great about what they've got. We forget about NPF because of everything, but I think that he doesn't need to be forgotten. Honestly, I hope that they just find someone that's not going to get him killed like Dillard did last year. And I think that they can do that. They can piecemeal something together. I don't love it. So I think I'm probably very sick to my stomach about it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, back to JC Latham. A lot of criticism about his not running the athletic testing and all that. It's feel like there was a report out there that was due to some sort of injury concern, maybe aggravating something, or they might have found something that prevented him from doing it. I don't know if it was actually a decision, if he was running scared from the drills or what, but I watched the tape and I can kind of see how if you watch him, he doesn't move. He doesn't appear to move as well as some of the other tackles in this class. But I mean, from a functionality standpoint, he gets the job done. I just think he's one of those guys that is so thick and girthy, fat in the ass, fat in the thighs, that he looks like he's moving slower than he actually is. What do you think about the athletic testing concern? Where did you weigh in on that debate?
So one things I loved about his pass pro when you watch him is that he's got a very patient ability about him. He lets things develop and he lets things get to him quick. He's not afraid to let someone get to him because he knows he's about to create his own separation with his punch. And he doesn't overpunch. What I mean by that is that when I saw a lot of times with Dillard, and I'm Andre Dillard, I know you're
Catching strays.
long time listener to the podcast, Unofficial Titans Podcast. Sorry. But a lot of times I thought his problem was, and a lot of tackles who struggle, is that they try to create this fake power. They try to say, "Oh, I'm getting bull rush. I need to create." So they will start their punch and they'll dip their head. Well, if you're looking at the grass, you're not seeing what's going on around you very simply. So I moved back to Latham so far, watching him in pass pro. That head stays back and he's ready. He's in a good position. And I see the movement side to side as some people could say slower. I thought he was actually more patient than anything. And I thought that he had nice little quick bursts, quick for a 6'5", 350-pound man, whatever he is. I just think but he doesn't look like he's sloppy. When you look at this big guy, he looks like he's very well put together as far as his body type, and he's broad. Like you were just saying, I don't think they're going to ask him to go go run out and be the lead blocker on a lot of screens. He's not the same tackle Lewan is. Which is what I thought made Lewan special, is he could go out and run and do those kinds of things. He could run out to places. He'd get things in a hurry because he was essentially a tight end in a lineman's body. But, physical as well. So Latham, I just think that within his constructs of I always laughed when they said, well, offensive linemen need to be running these 100-yard sprints. Like, why? We're going 5 yards max. Leave me alone.
We don't need to do this.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. I'm not as concerned about it. Plus, if you look at anything, Caleb DeBoer was so hope of saying, not mix things up. The Saban fourth quarter program with the conditioning, everything that all Alabama people went through, it's one of the tops in the nation. It was so good that the new head coach comes in and goes, "Not changing it. Sorry, love it.
We're going to run it.
We're going to run it." So the concerns with Alabama is always, are they beat up and everything? I don't think that's necessarily the concern. I think but you don't ever really question a whole lot of their conditioning. Now, what he's done since then, since he's been on his own, that's what's going to lead to if he's going to be in good shape coming in with some of his athletic stuff.
One of the things that I noticed, and again, this is just a nitpick. I had Latham as tackle 3 in this class, but I really had trouble finding things on his tape that I didn't like. And it felt like maybe once or twice a game, something with his pass sets would be a little wonky, whether it was not getting deep enough to match the edge rusher core to core, or maybe going too deep and giving up the inside and having to end up chasing the guy. I just wanted to ask you, first of all, did you notice any instances of that, or am I nitpicking here? Okay.
I noticed that, especially against the Michigan. I thought I don't think he had a best game versus Michigan. I don't think he was awful either. Like, people said, oh, he got abused by Michigan. I don't think he got abused. I just think that I didn't think the offensive line for Alabama had I don't think any one of them had a great game versus Michigan. I thought that they all kind of, I don't know if their scouting report was off, or if they just were thinking, oh, Big Ten, we're going to push them over. They definitely didn't look like the Alabama line that I had seen all year, for sure. But I would say that if you go and watch any tackles film, they're going to have some instances where, like, whoops, I got. That's the thing when you're going against people that are similar skill, is and that's why people always want to go and say, well, I saw a pass pro drill, and I stopped listening. I do not care. I do not care what happens in wide receiver corner one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Unless the corner is shutting down everything, then I'm like, okay, that's a guy. Because it's so slanted to the receiver to be successful. It's the same thing with pass pro drills on 101. It's so working against the offensive line. First of all, the defensive line is not reading anything. They've got a free go on left and right. There's no blockers to go around. There's nothing, just 101. So if I see an offensive lineman that then holds his own, I'm like, all right, I'm impressed now. I'm like, defensive lineman, you kind of should win this rep, to be honest with you. But I would say that on film, you're still going to get situations where people guess wrong. You're still going to get situations where people got themselves in a bad situation because they were just thinking too much. So, and that's the one negative I had about Latham was his ability to go block that wide 9, just because I didn't really see him try to do it in college. There wasn't a whole lot asked of him, so I didn't know what his kick slide was going to look like and how quick he was going to be able to. But I say he gets out of his stance pretty quickly for what he did get asked to do, so I just kind of translated over, well, I think he can be taught. I mean, the kid's pretty strong, and that's part of that kick slide, is getting that left leg to kick back, or excuse me, right leg if it's on the left. I'm sorry, getting my left and my rights mixed up here. That's my one concern is how's he going to handle that? And I think that as an offense, that's when we talked about that toolkit of do we need to help Chip until he can get where he's rounding out with that. So I think he can do it. I just don't know if he can. I don't know if he will, because we haven't seen it yet.
So and ultimately my question, the reason I brought that up was because I wanted to ask you, because you've been the coaching perspective from this thing, like, is that issue something that is coached, like he's just supposed to get to a certain spot, or is it a read and react feel sort of thing? Is it something that can be corrected at the next level?
It can be. It's all about the person, though.
Okay.
I'm going to bring up a very bad name here, Isaiah Wilson.
Okay, here we go. All right.
So if Isaiah Wilson had been more mature and had actually taken things seriously, he'd still be a starting tackle for the Titans right now. I think he had all the tools in the world. He'd at least be their starting right tackle right now. But he came in with all he was worried about was getting money. He never really loved football. There's things there that you can't really tell. And I think there was red flags. There's things maybe they should have picked up on. They took a chance on the ceiling of that athlete. And it was a good ceiling. I mean, so there's a lot of things could have happened there. So a lot of that. So where I'm going with that is that you can either have the Isaiah Wilsons who just didn't give a shit.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want on this show.
Did not give a shit. And I think you go back and you look at some of those posts that Lawan did when they were in the pool and Isaiah Wilson is just passed out. I'm like, oh, haha, that's funny. And then wait, now you know the whole story. Like, oh, so like
light bulbs going off.
Right. He was not willing to work. So it didn't matter. Any type of coaching was going to get through to him. So my answer there is it's 50-50. You have to be able to have the ability and willingness to learn, which I think Latham has. And then the coaching after that, which he's got a good one that can go out there and teach him the angles and go through all that kind of stuff. And that is going to be the first thing they're going to evaluate when they get Latham lined up is how quickly can we be sure you can handle this? And they're going to, I guarantee they're going to throw as much as they can at him to make sure and go from there. And at that point in time, it's up to Latham whether he handles it or not. And I don't expect him to handle it right away. And if he does, oh boys, we got him. We're good.
But
if he doesn't, you got to give it a little time. I mean, even Neo in the Matrix didn't get the jump the first time.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm curious of how you scouted these offensive tackles, because like at the draft party, we're live on YouTube and everywhere. And in the moment, Braden asked, like, what are your choices here? I wanted Roma Dunze, I wanted Olu Fashanu, and then I wanted JC Latham. JC Latham was my third choice. And then once we got to drinking, Zach and I were talking about it, and I just sat there and I was like, no, you know what? Like, if they feel they can take the tape that we saw at right tackle and just import it at left tackle, I think there is that power, that mean streak in JC Latham that makes him the choice. And I came around thinking about it in that fashion, but I'm curious what you think about Olu Fashanu and why it didn't feel like he was ever really an option for this team. It felt like they liked JC Latham, they liked Joe Walt, and who knows what would have happened if both of those guys were gone.
So you want to know what I thought when Jim Wyatt reached out to me to ask me who I thought the Titans would draft. I told him Fashanu.
Did you?
I didn't think they'd pull the trigger on Latham. I didn't think I didn't think that they would see, because just because I liked him didn't mean that an NFL team would agree with me. And I kind of figured Alt would be gone. So I didn't even consider Alt, to be honest with you. But for me, where I had my tackles ranked were those three were the top, and then you start having some gaps down the list a little bit as far as the tackles are concerned. The other tackle I wanted later in the draft was Patrick Paul as a project.
I loved Patrick Paul.
So I was really like, I was telling the Twitter show, I was like, can they get Patrick Paul? Can we get it? Like, like I knew 38 was a little too high. Maybe, I don't know. I just was like, yeah. And for me, because like, I think that in a year or two, that guy was going to be really good. And I think that's I thought that was if Latham works out at left, I thought that he could fill in at right tackle or surprise everybody and whoop, they switch, but I think that he was a bit of more of a project than the other tackles that we were talking about. So just, I wanted to throw Patrick Paul out there. I watched some Paul film and I liked him, but I was like, oh, he's a little rough around the corner sometimes, but there's some stuff, really a lot of stuff like there. So I told him that, and I get it. Everybody wants the big receivers. We're starting to fall off the board and you're thinking, oh man, we really need something flashy. I'm going to go back to Callahan's going to find ways to get guys open, and you've got D-Hop, you've got Ridley. I really think you've got two good 1 and 2 receivers there. It gets a little murky after that. I do agree from there, but I think that he can find ways to get the tight ends more involved in the pass game, which, you got Wiley, you've got, which I don't know why I'm saying Wiley first, but Okonkwo can line up in different positions to help you out. And I'm not as worried about the receivers this year as I was last year before Hopkins was picked up. I was like, oh, screwed up AJ Brown and there's nothing in the cupboard. What are we doing? But this year I feel a little better about it because I think they're going to find ways to get people involved. Spears is going to be able to be involved in the pass game as well. A heavy dose, I believe. Pollard's a really good receiving running back, in my opinion. I think that they're going to be fine with a lot of that stuff. But I was just, for me as the draft, I'm like, just get a tackle, please.
Yeah.
And get
Yeah.
one next round and get one in your next pick. And the pick, I think that you, was it Jonathan and I were on with you before last year's draft. And I
Mhm.
said, I think I told you were like, what do you want the Titans to dress? I said, tackle now, tackle next year, tackle the year after that. Keep drafting tackles till somebody works out, because
Yeah.
right now I was scared to death of you. And yes, you need to get your next quarterback after Tannehill, which I hope they've done. I still have my doubts a little bit, but I hope Levis, he's got all the tools. I'll tell you that. But I wanted some stuff around there to protect him, because he's not going to last long if you keep getting him hit 10 to 15 times a game.
Sure. Yeah,
So
and that was
I
the
was
thing.
thinking draft wise. So
Yeah, and the thing for me was like, look how competitive this team was for the most part in 2023 with the tackle situation that they had. It's like, man, if you can just get reasonably better there, it's going to unlock so much more for the offense. So it was the one thing. We did a preview show, Football and Other F Words, before the draft, and Zach asked us, like, what's the one thing that they've got to come away with in this draft? And I'm like, it's a tackle, left tackle, right tackle. I don't care. They've got to get tackle help. So finally addressing that position. Ultimately, I had no qualms with it. I'm happy with the pick now. I'm really happy to see more of JC Latham's personality coming out, and I think that was part of what had so many people that were down on the drafting from the jump. So many people started coming around with the whole, like, the Trench King stuff, and then he goes in this presser and says, I'm willing to die for my team. Like, you can't just say it, you've got to be about it. And I'm like, yes, this is what we need.
isn't it amazing what happens when your personal biases kind of get out of the way and you start listening to other people who are excited about a pick, and you go, oh,
Yes.
maybe I might be wrong with some of this. And here's the thing. If you look back on this media later on and go, oh, Ryan, you liked Latham? Ugh, how could you do that? You're stupid. Well, yeah, I'm excited now. Well, I didn't know what was going to happen. But I really think that you have a lot of people talking to him as a prospect, not only just his the program he was in, his knowledge, everything. He just, when I said intelligent, I really mean it. I think that he's a football guy and he gets it. And then you get there with the power he has and the comments of, I'm going to die for this. I'm going to throw myself in the wood chipper for this team. Like, I think they found their tackle. I think they found the perfect guy. I think he's the anti Isaiah Wilson. Please don't prove me wrong.
No, I'm right there with you. So if you're going down, I'm going down with you on this pick. 38, another controversial pick that I don't think was universally well received right off the bat. The Titans go with Texas defensive lineman T'Vondre Sweat. Ryan, your gut reaction off the bat when they announced the pick, what did you think?
I think that it had been talked about that this was going to be the pick for so long. I was like, oh, it tracks. This is what they're going to do the whole time.
It was a huge moment of truth. We were at the 440 party that night, and Zach and I were sitting there when the Titans were on the clock. We're just like, man, we have talked so much shit about T'Vondre Sweat going to the Titans. Like, this is the moment of truth thing. And the victory lap that Zach did when they called his name was just awesome. I wish people could have seen it. And my hand still hurts from the high five we gave each other after they announced the pick. But I was ecstatic about it.
Yeah. I was not surprised. Like, oh, it's going to be that pick. In fact, I think I was out with Jonathan Boren and he goes, so what's the pick? And I was like, yeah. What do we think it was going to be? Like, like everybody and their grandmother's euchre tournament players were talking that it was going to be T'Vondre Sweat. I mean, everybody had this penciled in. I mean, the Titans probably could have gone up to the NFL draft board, official board, and written in black Sharpie, T'Vondre Sweat. We're done.
There's a small part of me, and this is only half of a joke, but there's a small part of me that wonders, like, if Latham and Alt were gone, would they have pulled the trigger on Sweat
No,
in the
please
first
no.
round?
No, if Latham and Alt were both gone, I think that the trade back, they're looking a little more desperately to trade back at that point in time. But I think they go after Fashanu at that point.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think that's what they do in the first round, or maybe they go Rome and say, well, I guess we can't get our tackles, so let's go with. So I don't know how their board was faced out. I would hope they would still address tackle at some point in that first, either 7th or 11th or 12th pick or whatever they could have picked up there. No, I don't think they would have gotten Sweat in the first round, but they do apparently like him.
They liked him a lot. I'm just saying.
Let's talk about the concerns. Okay. I've heard a lot of conditioning concerns. It looks like he played his fair share on the Texas line. I do not have those stats in front of me. Go check out Zach's tweets, Zach's posting. He did a great job getting all of those
He's been
out
on
there.
it.
Has been on it. I think he averaged 35 plays a game if I'm not misquoting.
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
Than Byron Murphy.
Yeah.
Had. So like, and then you look back at some of the top at their rookie seasons, the other tweet he put out about the top guys in the league right now, Simmons, including in that they were hovering between 30 and 45 picks or plays right there. But later on, as they increased from their rookie season, they got bigger. So to me, I think that you draft him knowing we're addressing a huge gap on this defense last year, which was teams, especially towards the end of the season, just ran right over the Titans through the middle of that defense and linebacker, D line. And it wasn't Simmons' fault, but if you're an offensive coordinator going against the Titans, guys, there's one guy. It's just you get him away and we're good. So now what you do especially on the early downs, you put something out there that can be a stopgap. And I mean that literally.
Yeah.
They can control 1 to 1.5, maybe even 2 gaps, depending on how he can move. Because you talked about Latham being a physically imposing. They essentially got a heavier, less mobile, maybe, but a guy that mirrors Latham on the defensive line. They can match up next to Simmons and really free up Simmons. And I'm sitting here thinking, as a defensive strategy, if you just made Jeffrey Simmons' job easier for him, I don't know. That sounds like a good thing to me.
Well, and conversely, if you're an offensive coordinator, I mean, how do you game plan for having 2 guys like that right next to each other?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like now you've gone to where we have to double, we have to go for Simmons. Now it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So you attack more outside now because one of the weaknesses right now is going to be the Titans edge, but you're hoping that is plugged up. So now that you can throw blitzes, you can throw stunts, you can create pressure off of those edges in a way that now you're really causing some people, because if you can plug up the middle of those 3 B to B gaps there, or really C to C in a way, inside C to C, C negative to C negative through the left and the right sides, then you're really going to be able to take a lot of pressure off the rest of the guys, make it easier for defense coordinators to call what they want to. They don't necessarily have to say, okay, that's taken care of. We can be a little more experimental out here with some other things that we're doing. So I think it's a good thing. And I think that Sweat was a good pick. Now, I would be curious, the people who hate this pick, if he weighed 350, 345, 350. If he didn't get a DWI in April, which, listen, I don't condone anything like that. I hope he never has one again. I hope no one ever does them. The truth of the matter is people have gotten them. They can turn awful. It's why you don't risk it and you don't do that, because you don't know what your end result is going to be.
Sure.
I don't want to dig too much into that because he made a mistake. I hope he learns from it. But I think a lot of the reports of him trying to be a party guy, not concerned, were more from and I'll trust Mike Herndon on this, who is a Texas fan and followed the situation very closely over the years, said that was more concerns from his early years at Texas, that he really recommitted himself. And you saw that when the weight dropped off from him from his last year to this year for college, and then leading up, and it seems like he's maintained that and kept that off. So it seems like he recommitted himself. And then the naysay thing that's there would be like, well, April 12th, literally this year, I get it. That whole situation seems like it was awful. Someone rear-ended him, flipped his car.
Yeah.
He was given the DWI because I think he probably was right there over the limit. I don't know all the details. I just know that there was some stuff like that around there. It's not as cut and dry. I'm not trying to defend it at all. It's awful. Don't do that. Don't drink and drive, kids. So I think that's the point there. But I'm hoping that this last you hear of it. And then here we go back to everyone's still scorned from the margaritas and the donuts in the middle of an intersection, not bring him up. I'm talking about Isaiah Wilson way too much for a podcast.
Well, it's, you know what? That's been the chatter this week.
It's still fresh in everyone's mind.
It hurts.
You can't put everybody in the same box. As human beings, we're all going to react to things differently. We're all going to walk our own path in life. And I really hope that, so if you take all that out, and I know you can't, but if you do, this looks like a really good pick for the Titans. In fact, he may go earlier than where he did on day 2. He may go a little earlier than 38. Maybe you have to trade up to get him at this
Yeah.
point if you like.
Yeah.
Rand GM speak maybe was saying that other guys were going, "Dadgum, you took our guy." Like the people were like calling him, texting him, mad at him. So like, from an NFL thing, which is what honestly these guys at the end of the day, unless there's just major red flags from like, there's some unforgivable things out there, obviously murder and things like that. But you evaluate people on like just a football basis first, and the Titans feel like they got their guy. I'm off my soapbox now, but that's kind of where I am with it. Give the young man a chance. If he messes up again, then we can crucify the pick and crucify him if he messes up bad. But give him a chance, because it's human nature. You kind of have to give people a second chance in life.
Sure. So I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying James Foster did not like the pick of Tavondre Sweat, but he put together it's the best argument from the camp that doesn't like the Sweat pick. It's the best argument that I've heard as for why you wouldn't like the pick all week. He was on the Hot Read podcast with Easton and JT yesterday's show. I'd say go check that out. A very reasonable, respectful, thoughtful critique of the pick. But in it, he said something that I really liked that I hadn't thought of before. But the rosy tinted glasses version of this, Tavondre Sweat kind of takes up space along the defensive line, eats gaps, whatever, and makes it easier on the linebackers at the second level to defend the run because there's not as much space to defend. There's not as much to diagnose, that sort of thing. So I want it, like, from a schematic standpoint, X's and O's. What do you think the potentially exponential impact of Tavondre Sweat's addition could be for this defense?
It's that right there. What you're hoping for when you have someone is that you're really hoping at his size that he's not going to be one making the plays, that he's allowing others to make the plays around him. And that's why I say that you can't really go off of stats a lot of times in NFL for certain positions, because if you're going to get caught up, like tight end, for example, if you just go off receptions and touchdowns, you're missing out on half of what they're doing for an offense in their blocking game, and what makes them the really special ones who can block and then go out and still produce. For a defensive tackle, you've got the unicorns out there like Chris Jones, Jeffrey Simmons, that can do a little bit of everything, and you kind of expect that out of those kind of players with their makeup. But sometimes it's okay to pick the guy that can just literally make 4 or 5 other guys shine. And really, at that point in time, you're going, okay, well, this is working because we're all working together because we're a team.
Yeah.
But if that guy is also going to be lazy, he's going to take plays off, that he's going to make it harder on everybody, because now you're having unexpected things, which is where the downside to this is. We didn't get to a lot of the negatives yet. And that's actually what I was going to say was, if he's not motivated, if he hasn't turned it around and he's not eating up space, then he's really worthless.
Yeah.
Could be. Sorry. Not that he is. He could be.
Yeah. And that's a tough spot. Like, I don't know. That's where you do have to kind of roll the dice a little bit and take a leap of faith that, you've done your homework on a guy. You feel confident that you can get that out of him. But in the end, man, with this draft process, I mean, do you think is this a long enough time to really get to know somebody? Do you really get the chance to get to that level of comfort with a guy?
Well, let me ask you this: when you were in the dating year, I know you and I both have been removed from that for a while, but were you always showing your real self immediately off the bat, or were you hiding some of your weird?
Well, I don't know. I've always been pretty comfortable in my own skin. I did back in the day.
That's why you're a lovely, lovely man.
I had a tendency to kind of get some of that stuff out on the first date and just be like, because I don't waste my time, like, here's what you're getting with me. And if that's a problem for you, it's cool. No hard feelings, but I'm gonna move on with my life.
I think that's what works out later on in life, because I got there eventually when I met my wife, as I got to where I was like, oh, you know what? You might as well know this now, because we're gonna find out. I like Star Wars. I collect the Legos and Funko Pops and all kinds of stuff. And now I'm into shoes. I like Nike Dunks. So like, yeah, just let's go ahead and get this out there. I'm going to spend some stupid money on stupid things that I'm going to say I'm going to sell that I never do. But my point there is that it's human nature for the majority to not really hide, to hide some things, or to maybe not be, because like, why would Isaiah Wilson have ever gotten drafted if he didn't hide some things,
Yeah.
This guy's 4 mentions of Isaiah Wilson. Anyway, so I'm not obsessed. Um, so I think that when you say, is that enough time? I think it can be if you are trying to rule out a couple things. If you just have a short list that you want to rule out personality wise. And here's the thing. Uh, as terrible as this movie can be in certain parts, I do think that Draft Day with Kevin Costner did get some things right, that they do go and ask. They go down the line. They can go back and ask a lot of people that were involved in a lot of situations, questions, especially if you're talking about going after a high draft. So I don't, if the Titans didn't do that, I got questions. So I think that they at least got their answers. They had probably a list of red no go if it wasn't correct. Then they had maybe we'll live with it. And they said, you know what, we can live with those answers. And I think they had enough of the ones over in the column of no go answered that they were like, okay, let's move forward, because I think the risk is kind of worth the reward you
Yeah.
could get out of that. I just think, and again, if it doesn't hit, at least you got a big body in there in the middle that can eat up some space. I mean, hopefully he doesn't turn out to be Mount Cody, for
Yeah.
the
Ain't
so
that the truth? So how much do you have any sort of maybe patience isn't the right word. Are you a little more willing to accept this risk if you know this is going to be like a multi-year rebuild? If it's like, hey, we're trying to get cornerstone pieces, it might not happen. We still have some time to rebuild if it doesn't work out. I mean, does that factor into the conversation at all? I wouldn't think so, but I'm just spitballing here as to why reasons why there's so much comfort with the mass of red flags out there, if
yep.
you will.
So the Titans have never struck. I've never been. My takeaway has never been that they're completely doing an all out rebound, because then why are some of the players that are here still here?
Yeah.
If they were doing an all out rebuild, they would have had a fire sale over the last couple of years, but they still felt like they could be competitive. And maybe it's to a detriment. Maybe they should have pulled the plug 2 years ago and said, everybody, see ya. We're going to start all over and do this scratch, and we're going to suck for 3 years. We're going to get 3 number 1 picks back to back to back, and we're going to roll out. Maybe that's what they should have done, but they didn't. So they don't strike me this year that they're trying to rebuild either, but there definitely is some grace with a completely new regime. You've had the new GM starting his second year. You've got the new head coach. You've got the new coaching staff. Everybody's kind of got a little bit new of a clean slate that's coming back that was involved in the organization in some way or another. I think you have to extend that same grace to the draft picks as well, as far as you have to be able to be a little more patient and again, if you're judging somebody off there, I'm going to judge someone a little harder off of where they finish on plays, on season, on games than where they started. So there's the basketball program my daughter's involved with. They said, just get 1% better every day. We're working. We're going to be the hardest playing team, but we're going to get 1% better today. Did you get 1% better? I think that's the end goal for everybody. So, and there's going to be, unfortunately, with that 1%, sometimes there's a 2% back step, but then you have to step up 3% the next day to make sure that you accounted for that. So I think that with this, I'm going a long way to where I was to say, yes, I think there is a little bit more of a leash there, but I think that it doesn't mean you get lazy or
Sure.
allow a guy to just fail. You have to do what you can. Like if Latham's just not the guy at left tackle after four games, then don't hurt the guy any further. Let's give him a right tackle and let him eat, but with Sweat, I mean, it's kind of a little, I'm not going to say it's an easier position to play, but he's relying more on his physical traits to block things up and to do what he needs to be there. And you just have to tell him a little bit more to go be you and do it well. Don't be lazy.
So let's talk about the rest of the draft picks: Cedric Gray, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., Jaquan Jackson, James Williams, Jalen Harrell. This class, any guys from the back end that really stand out that you want to talk about?
Man, I really think Cedric Gray is the other one from this draft that I could think could have, along with Latham. I think Cedric Gray could end up having a really big impact for this defense, because they were solely lacking some linebacker depth for the most part. But I think that what he could be, I mean, I don't think he is what I would ever accuse him of being elite in any one area, but I think he was pretty daggum good at covering, being a coverage linebacker, which in this day and age in the NFL you really need.
You
So
got
I
to
think
be. Yep.
a lot of that kind of stuff. I think overall, I think that he was one of the best picks they could have made in the 4th round at 106. I think that he can improve a lot of things for the Titans, make things, again, that theme we're talking about, make things easier for guys around you. Again, I think you have to be a little, let him get into it a little bit, but I like him. And of course I like Brownlee as well. I think I don't think I've seen a lot. What was the linebacker from Cincinnati that I really liked on the podcast? Pace. I said you want a
Ivan
dog.
Pace.
You want a guy that's going to absolutely be a mauler. Go get that guy. You asked me
Yeah.
who's a Vrabel guy you want. I said go get him, and I wish they would have because he's pretty good.
He is, yeah, undrafted free agent too. Didn't
Yep.
even get called.
I would have loved for that one because, like, God, but Brownlee, I think, is that version of a corner. I think that he's not as elite. His mobility, I think he's probably going to end up maybe being a safety at some point in time in his career. We'll see, but I think that his physical edge he has is going to allow him some playing time somewhere on the field. With how physical it can be. So I'm excited to see what those two can do for the defense. And, obviously now when you get into you're talking about getting into the back end of the draft, the 5, 6, 7, you're hoping these guys are special teams contributors.
Yeah.
That's why you're drafting them. You're like, if they're going to make this team, that's what it is. If you're drafting the 7th round, not everybody's a Brock Purdy. I'm sorry. You're really hoping that they're going to be a contributor on special teams. And guess what? If they do end up cracking your starting lineup within their first 3 years in the NFL, Yahtzee. Fantastic. Yeah. You struck absolute gold, but it's doesn't happen that often. Purdy is definitely not going from Mr. Irrelevant to a top flight quarterback. Doesn't happen. It's why it's so rare, and it's why it's so special what he's doing. So I think it's the same thing with some of these back end picks. I think the old head scratcher for me is I can't think of the receiver's name off the top of my head.
Jaquan Jackson.
Well, yeah, Jackson's who I'm talking about, but the one I wanted them to have at that pick.
Was it the rest of us were team Malik Washington? That's
Malik
who we
sorry.
really wanted. Yeah,
I kept saying another Malik in my head, so I was like, but that wasn't it. So Malik Washington, yes, that's what I was hoping they would go for at that point, and maybe that's because I was listening to y'all too much. But I was like, yeah, I like him. Yeah, look what Stoney's saying about him. Oh, yeah, he's great. But when Jaquan Jackson, it kind of just screams. Jackson just kind of screams, oh, we kind of got the inside. We kind of had some inside knowledge about this guy, Tulane.
For sure.
Spears laid into this a little bit. I think, though, that you're trying your dangest to know what's something else the Titans have struggled with over the past, I don't know, decade, is returns, maybe not decade. I'm being a little too harsh, but they've struggled a little bit in the return game.
Yeah.
So I think they're just trying to throw bodies at it and see what sticks.
That's not a bad strategy. I like our buddy Jake in the comments adding about the risk on taking T'Vondre Sweat. It's like risking a fart after a night of drinking. Could soil your pants, but even if it's bad, you get new underwear. That's a plus gain either way. I like that, Jake. That's a good take on the risk of drafting T'Vondre Sweat. Ryan, have you gotten a chance to kind of catch up on the squad of undrafted free agents that the Titans have added? Are there do you need a moment? Or
yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anything related. It was all so awful and yet so perfect at the same time. Like, well, that's so positive, man. You get new pants. I mean,
yeah, it is.
I'm sorry. Well done.
This class of undrafted free agents, any of these guys that stick out to you that you think have a real shot at making this roster?
I really, the one I like, the Oliver kid is Oliver out of Youngstown State. I'm excited. I'm kind of curious to see. I said the name right. Oliver, the receiver out of Youngstown.
I don't know. How
Bryce
about
Oliver.
that, Ryan? Bryce Oliver. That's it. Yeah.
Yep. I'm excited just to see if he can do anything. I think I'm also just looking for a receiver at some point in time to be the golden gem, which out of everything, like I'm looking for one of these guys to be what I thought Kyle Phillips was going to be before you realize he's a paper mache, can't stay on the field. Just someone to come in and press Burks to actually be motivated to be good. Like if that's what that guy does, that is all great. But again, I think a lot of these guys, if they make the team, they're special teams fodder.
Yeah.
However, Dylan Johnson.
Oh, I love Dylan Johnson.
Watching him run the ball, the power. So what did we talk about earlier about you're losing your identity a little bit from power running back from Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's not your typical power running back because he had the elite speed to go with it, which is what makes him a unicorn. Don't try to replace that. You're not going to find it. It doesn't exist. It was a one-time shot. There's not going to be any more Derrick Henrys, at least for a little bit. And when they tried to replace him with the guy's name escapes me, the Alabama running back they thought was the next Derrick Henry after him that played for the Cowboys for a little bit, but then didn't end up panning out. Lions too. Anyway,
Bo Scarborough.
yeah, Scarborough.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it doesn't there's a reason why these guys are unicorns because they don't come around that often and they're pretty it took years to get from Bo Jackson to someone else that could be an elite
Yeah.
unicorn back. So, but Dylan Johnson, I think, can replace a little bit of that power if he can crack the lineup. So I'm excited to see what he can do. He had a very successful 2023. I know it's the Pac-12, but he at least was someone you saw run with power. He hit the hole with some fever under him, man. He really ran the ball well. Averaged, I think, I do have the stats in front of me. I don't want to act like I know this off the top of my head. 5.1 yards per carry, 16 touchdowns, and 1,185 yards. So, and he played all 14 games. He played 11, 13, 11, and 14 over his career. So a healthy guy, played the majority of his games, played in the SEC for a long time, has some success there as well. Varying success as well, but I had some receiving as well. I mean, I'm really excited to see his name that pops out for me. Pick an offensive lineman. I hope that they can crack onto the team and get to the depth chart because we need it.
Man, I like this Cole Spencer kid out of Texas Tech. That was a guy late in our draft process that Zach hit me up and was like, hey, this kid, I think he was at their local day. And he's like, I ran his numbers into the Titans fit ratings that he's come up with because Zach's a genius. And he's like, he looks like a pretty good match for what this team wants. You might want to add him. So it's like 11 o'clock on a Friday night. And I'm like, hang on, babe. I got to watch Cole Spencer out of Texas Tech. But I fired up a couple of his games and I'm like, this kid's got some good tape. He's an athlete, tested well, fits well. And then lo and behold, Zach's ratings look pretty accurate. They end up with Cole Spencer in camp. And I think he's a guy that I don't think he's got a shot at playing tackle, but I think he's a guy that could push some of the interior guys. I don't know the prospects of him moving to center to back up at that spot, but I think he can push some of these guys. And I'm not going to be surprised if he ends up on the final roster.
No, and if he does, you're looking for these guys, like I hinted at earlier, that you're looking for at the very least someone that can push the starters to be better, to not be complacent. And that's my problem with a lot of the offensive line is they just don't seem to have anybody that can say, well, like, I mean, if they did, then why did Dylan start as much as he did for the Titans?
Right.
I mean, they need someone that can push that goes, oh, if you don't, then we're going to replace you with this. They've got to have a little bit of that in the back of their head to be able to produce, in my opinion. Competition is never a bad thing. So you look at those guys. That's what I'm hoping out of any of the offensive linemen they pick up, and the undrafted guys. Like, just come in and surprise us. Be the old story of Brandon Bullsworth for Arkansas, walk on and then become a All-American. It's just happened to him. But still, I mean, like surprise everybody. That's what you're hoping for. But like, if you're asking me what I think realistically, I think it's Dylan Johnson can catch on special teams. I think that after that, I think that he could potentially be what they thought Haskins was.
Yeah, I would agree. The thing that I particularly like about Dylan Johnson is just kind of how smooth he is through traffic. I mean, it's easy for him, whether he's lowering his shoulder to take on a guy or whether he's like sinking his hip to get low and get through the hole, squirting out on the other side. There's a fluid quality. I'm talking about fluid and squirt and all kinds of stuff.
This went off the
3:00
earlier, so we're in the muck, man. Play around and it's fine.
It's 3:00 on a Friday. The weekend hadn't even started and we're talking about squirt and fluid. But the way Dylan Johnson sinks his hips and squirts through the hole is just it's awesome. And I think when I try to like project why it was that he didn't get drafted, I don't know if it's just the injury concern. I don't know if it's just like he didn't test to be this elite athlete, but I don't know how you watch his tape and think he's not deserving of a draft pick. Maybe it's just a testament to how crowded this year's running back class was. I don't think there were too many real elite guys, but it felt like this class was like 20 deep at day 3 guys that are going to contribute in a rotation.
Well, and you see how the NFL treats the running back position. It's not a high value position across the board.
Sure.
It's not going to be a whole lot of multi-year contracts anymore. It's just not where they are these days. And without that ankle injury, it was in the Sugar Bowl, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
because he was doubtful for the national championship, and then he still went out there, and I don't think he played the whole game, but he gutted it out for a little bit anyway.
So that's the worst time of the year to get for someone who's trying to go get drafted to get injuries right there. The last thing that's fresh in people's mind, but it's an ankle injury. It didn't end the season, like obviously not all the way. It hampered it.
Yeah.
But as far as I can remember, he was fairly healthy everywhere else. I get the ankle injury, but again, it's not like we're talking about 17 breaks in the leg or had to have all his ligaments replaced does Spears even have any ligaments in his knees?
No, yeah,
So I mean, I think it's a little bit of, it's a depth thing. It's running backs aren't thought as highly of. And again, but if you can crack the right spot, Jonathan and I would have this discussion all the time, Bourne and I, when we used to do our podcast, is like some guys, this is Tom Brady. If he doesn't land with the Patriots where he was, he eventually became pretty, obviously elite, but if he doesn't start off with the Patriots, is he more likely a owner of a local Denny's or an NFL quarterback? My only point there is maybe if he goes to the Niners, somebody's just successful, but like, is Derrick Henry as successful if he doesn't go to the Titans, a run first team, or the Cowboys, something like that, or the Seahawks, maybe, is he not, so a lot of times that these perfect spots for these guys has to be accounted for as well. And maybe sometimes a running back who's filling a need and doing these kind of things can really take a hold of that opportunity. And I just, when you look through those names, Dylan Johnson was the one that was like, all right, here was a quality starter that's a undrafted guy on the Titans roster who are still going to run the ball. And need something for power at some point in time. So this isn't a horrible thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I mean, with these new returning rules, I kind of feel like it's going to benefit a running back more than a wide receiver because it's essentially like a run play now.
Yeah, why did the Titans target guys that return? Because the returns are back, baby.
Yeah, yeah.
They're making it. I really am excited to see that. By the way, like I think that's going to be a little better than people are thinking it's going to be.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there. I think it's going to end up being a pretty valuable position. Once the everybody's acclimated to the rules, I think you're going to be able to really make a play and maybe break a game on a return in this format. So I'm stoked to see it play out. Tyler Boyd has visited the Titans. I don't know, like maybe by the time we're done recording here, he's actually a Tennessee Titan. Did you say you're pulling up Pretty Ricky?
Yeah.
There's still a bit of an enigma to solve with Treylon Burks. The impression that I get that I've said is I kind of feel like they are going to try and move him around and give him some looks to try and salvage what he's capable of there. There's a lot of bodies at wide receiver, and I'm curious to get your take on the receiving core with or without Tyler Boyd.
So I think I did a whole lot of like leaking thing, like fluids leaking, squirting. Where are we, man? It's Friday. Happy Friday, everybody.
TGIF.
Get your mojitos out. You're a gin guy, so sorry. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot of gin drinks. I'm sorry. It's I've never, but yeah,
G&T, whatever. That's all you need.
Yeah, that's all you need is gin. There we go. Maybe I'll be a ginger from now on. No. The receiving, I kind of went into it a little earlier about, I think that you're in a much better shape now than you were last year. Before Hopkins was signed, I was like, or before Hopkins was added, you were like, I don't know what we're gonna do. But now you're looking at Calvin Ridley and Hopkins as your main two. And then, like I stated earlier, these two tight ends that the Titans have at the top, I think can be really good pass receiving tight ends that can filter into that third spot in some of the sets. So I think they've got a little more flexibility than they did last year. Now, once you get past those four for me, yeah, you better hope no one gets hurt long term. And that's a real concern. Burks, I think that they're going to give him shots. I think that there's a little bit of some of the coach speak here is coming in as you want to try to build up a guy's confidence who maybe hasn't been able to be given the shot that he has. He's been injured. You want him to not be down. Why wouldn't you? He's on your roster still on a rookie contract. Why wouldn't you try to build him up? He has talent. He had the film knowledge. I mean, and what they said is they may try to use him at slot, move him around. Let's find what works for him. Maybe he wasn't used correctly. Maybe we can find a home for him. And here's the deal. If Burks turns out to be a pretty good slot receiver in the NFL, I mean, I'll take him for 2 years. I mean, so be it. And if he's not, I think that, we keep thinking about NWI here, who he's like, I guess I got to go out and produce again. He hasn't been putrid You just were like, okay,
No.
I guess we got to rely on NWI again, which I mean, again, it's like, oh, okay, I guess. But
Well, I think that particular problem is that you're asking a guy who's probably best cast as wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 in a deep passing offense.
yeah,
You're asking him to be wide receiver 2 the last 2 seasons, it feels like.
right. And where he's not a wide receiver 2, he at least has produced in some way at an NFL level.
Yeah,
Like, all
for
right,
sure.
maybe under Callahan, even he can thrive a little more.
Oh, that would be sick.
Yeah, and hopefully Phillips is healthy and he can show what he saw on his film from college, because with his quickness and what he can do, he could be a real asset to this team. So there's a lot of things there. Obviously, if you can find Boyd, I think Boyd's 29. I'm not sure when he turns 30. I think he's 29.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you're approaching that like danger Will Robinson area for a wide receiver, but he's coming off of a season. I think he had 60 plus receptions, 600 plus yards, and he's familiar with the terminology and the offense is about to come in. So it'd be someone who could be plug and play for me. And if as long as they're not signing him to like a 4-year deal, I think it's a no brainer to try to at least have some consistency for your young quarterback, for your new head coach, for the offensive coordinators there, everything. I think it's just a safety blanket that can go, but I think that you can get around that a little bit. Am I thrilled with the receiver depth? No, but like I would challenge you to go around outside of the teams like Miami and some others. They're just absolutely studs at depth. But even like the Chiefs, I don't think are 100%. Now they got a lot faster this offseason. They got a lot of weapons there. But last year, I don't think the Chiefs were ever happy with their receiving core, and they found ways to win. Well, they got Patrick Holmes. I'm going down I'm going down I don't need to be going down because I'm comparing apples to mango trees. But I think that when you look at the depth chart, they are better than they were last year. And I still think you have options for a creative offensive mind.
Fair enough. So we this was one I didn't list to you. I'm just realizing as I'm reviewing the text to make sure we don't leave anything out. But I'm just gonna spring it on you and just see.
Love it.
Areas of need that remain on this team after the draft. Was there anything that surprised you that they didn't really address? And do you think there are quality options still out there that they can fill some of the holes you think they have?
Well, I think they need to address edge and safety primarily. I think that also tackle depth we talked about. That the easy thing to there for safety is just go spend some of your money on Justin Simmons. Go get him.
I know. Just do it. And
makes too much sense. He's right there. Go get him. I think that if you've got a lot of maybe you want to link back up with Adoree Jackson. I'm kidding. I think that Odell Beckham was taken. So with receiver, I don't think Boyd. Maybe there's some other things out there, but edge is the real one. I think that they need to go after in the tackle depth as well. And I just don't know what's out there for them to go. Maybe.
Man, I really liked. Who?
Rusher.
Who? I'm sorry. You're cutting out on me.
Emmanuel Ogbah.
There we go. Okay. All right. Yeah, I like him. I like Carl Lawson, but I have to be honest with people about Carl Lawson. I haven't really watched Carl Lawson since he's been with the Jets, but I did my homework on him when he was a free agent after his run with the Bengals. And I'm like, man, this dude, pay this man. Like he's going to be fantastic. And they didn't. And I don't remember who they went with instead of him, but I see that name pop up and I'm like, oh yeah, damn, Carl Lawson's still out there. Go get him. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, you're chasing names. You got to find someone who's going to be a fit and go from there. I mean, but it just from what's actually out there as far as the free agent class, I don't know who you go and get, but you need to address somebody, bring in bodies, see what can roll through.
What's your confidence level like in this new regime with Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, who, by the way, I don't know if you've seen this on Twitter, who's apparently the shadow king of the Titans organization. Chad Brinker is the one that's secretly running the whole thing. But Chad Brinker, Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan, the way they've gone about beginning to retool this roster and try and field a competitive squad. What do you think about the job they've done so far? What's your confidence level like in this group?
What is the tinfoil hat thing out there that ran is just a mouthpiece, and he's just the front and center,
Yes.
and everybody
Yes.
else is running behind him. So it was Vrabel running everything before, and now it's so I don't necessarily think that that's 100% untrue, because I think that anytime a new GM comes in, there's going to be some collaborative, and he has preached collaboration from day one. And I think that when it became kind of a little apparent that some of the metrics they wanted to focus on weren't going to be collaborated on in the Vrabel regime, they said, well, time to move on. And that's
Yep.
tough to do with Vrabel having the success the level of success he had, and what he was able to do with, honestly, some really crappy rosters, and able to produce anything, what he did.
Yeah.
So I think that as far as that, there's skepticism there when you're going from a quote unquote successful NFL coach for your team to someone else. But I think with where they're heading, you kind of have to, what was it that we got burned? The old saying we got burned on, in J-Rob we trust. Well, we shouldn't have trusted that man.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have, but that's my point. For a while there, we thought, dude, shit's gold. Can't do anything wrong. And what was hilarious about that, and I'm going to give him this props, I don't even know if he's listening, but Jonathan Bourne, I think it was after the 2020 season, he started going, man, he said, I'm not saying they're going to be, but if this doesn't go and this doesn't go based on decisions they've made, John Robinson and Vrabel are going to be on the hot seat. He said that a good year and a half before it actually happened. I was like, what crystal ball do you have, man? He was right on. I mean, like everything he was talking about, like the tackle situation flowed out, how they handled quarterback flowed out, the receiver. I mean, just, and this was before AJ Brown that he said this. So like,
That's wild. That's some foresight.
Yeah. Well, he's a very smart human being. But I
That'll
think
do
that
it.
you do have a level of trust and leash with people who are starting things out. I think though, if Latham fails, if Sweat fails, there's your top two picks from this year. If they're just absolutely horrible, then you start to go, all right now. But I think that the direction they're going, they're addressing the needs over flash, which I'm appreciative of. They're at least trying to say, well, we need help in these areas desperately. Offensive line was a desperate need, the tackle position. So they did that. They're sticking with their young quarterback, and they didn't try to upset that or do anything. They think they have enough there. The Titans themselves going and saying, you know what, Vrabel, we love you, and we're going to go on to something that's a little more exciting. We're going to try to get in a little more this century football. To me, shows the direction of the organization is at least pointed somewhere. Because I've been saying, I don't care what the Titans do, just be exciting, and they have been exciting.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. So like, I think that at least that right there tells me they're trying to go in that direction, and I'm willing to hear them out. At this point in time. Now, talk to me in a year, we'll see. But right now, I'm willing to hear them out.
All right, my man. Well, we have made it through my show notes. So I thank you again for taking the time to hop on and really dig into the JC Latham discussion. I personally think that was pretty good. Like, I don't know. I haven't caught every Titans podcast or show since the draft, but I got to figure that was some really detailed stuff that you're not going to get everywhere. So I appreciate your time today. Let our listeners, let our viewers know where they can find you on social media these days.
Yeah, I'm still on Twitter, Ryan on Broadway. I still love to repost anything that anybody's doing. Like I said earlier, a lot of props, a lot of guys doing a lot of good things out there for the Sobros, for Broadway. There's a lot of stuff like, and I'll be remiss to say, I know soccer is not everybody's bag, but Ben Wright and the Speedway crew are just absolutely, soccer was a more popular sport in America. Those would be the best soccer riders in America, and they would be thought of. You wouldn't even be able to talk to those guys. They're doing such a good job. They are really, their coverage of that team and Nashville soccer is just top notch if you're into soccer. So make sure that you're covering those guys. The Broadway crew, Justin Mello is out getting his scoops. He's doing a lot of good stuff. So just, I want to plug Broadway more than anything than myself. Those guys are still doing bang up job. Easton's really doing a lot of good things with the Hot Read podcast and everything he's doing out there. Of course, Mike Herndon's one of the best out there. I know he's writing for Paul, and he does the F Words podcast. It's just a lot of good talent. I think I mentioned Zach earlier. I hope if I didn't, my bad, Zach. I think you're doing a great job too. James Foster. If I forgot anybody, I'm sorry. My memory is not what it used to be at 43 years old. I took a lot of hits in college, and
it happens to the best of us.
But really some good stuff out there. But you can find me, Ryan, on Broadway on Twitter, and everything else is my personal social. So I'm not going to give it up.
There you go. There you go. Let them know. Let them know. I'm at Stoney Keeley on Twitter, collectively at Sobros Network on all major social media platforms. Rate, review, subscribe to the Unofficial Titans podcast wherever you take in your shows. Go to Stacking the Inbox, stackingtheinbox.com, and you get all of mine and Zach's coverage of the Tennessee Titans. Trey's up there too, writing a weekly column. Fantastic stuff. You get Sobro Saturday on the Sobro Substack now as well. Tomorrow we've got a new episode of the Movie Review Rewind podcast. Brandon and I dig into a hidden gem from 2003 called The Cooler that yielded an Oscar nom for Alec Baldwin. So if you're into that kind of stuff, you get the Sobros content on Saturday. It's a good time. $5 a month is all you got to pay. That's stackingtheinbox.com. For Ryan Watson, I'm Stoney Keeley, and until next time, you stay classy, Titans fans.